This is Jacob Bernander and Askur Ingvaldsson, educators, guides, and resident Vikings from the Viking Museum in Stockholm, Sweden. Today they're joining us to check out some of the world, weaponry, and mythology of God of War Ragnarok.
One detail that I caught on Odin's model is that the eye patch arrangement has some extra straps.
Yeah.
And one of them has a disc that has the rune F on it. What's the name of the F rune?
You can help me there.
You gotta do your homework, Jacob.
Yes.
Big thanks to all at the Viking Museum for joining us on this episode. You can see more of them in our God of War 2018 episode. But either way, make sure to go and check them out. All of their links will be in the description below. But without further ado, it's over to the Vikings.
First of all, last time we talked about this and watched the first game, we had a teaser of someone who visiting Kratos with a tool in his belt.
Tool.
At last we get to see who it is, but it was Thor.
Obviously.
The first impression of Thor is someone almost a biker type, and we can also recognize Thor by his red hair and red beard, so I like that image.
I am grateful it didn't go the blonde version that we see in a lot of popular movies, let's put it like that.
Okay, let's start by talking about the tool of Thor, his hammer.
Again, they've gone with the post-Viking Age runes / symbols. I don't like it, that's no secret, but at least it's consistent with the Leviathan axe.
You can also see the design of the hammer head is, you can recognize that it's Mjolnir, the hammer of Thor. So it's not just in the imagination of the creators, it's also based on at least some images from the Viking Age, or based on image of Viking Age, I would say. Yeah. And then he starts to fight, and he uses Mjolnir as we suspected too.
Actually, I would have expected him to use it a lot more, active. But most of the fight he spends with his hands. But then again, we see this at the end. He's trying to goad Kratos into unleashing the, the ghost of Sparta.
Yeah.
The destroyer aspect, which Thor is apparently quite bitter about being in Norse mythology, as we'll see later.
Yeah.
Now, one dramatic thing, when you're supposed to die in the game. Spoiler alert, it's been out for quite some time, and if you're out watching this video, it's already too late. But Kratos dies, you go to the game over screen, and then, suddenly, electricity. What's going on?
Well, he uses it as, or Thor is using it as a defibrillator to make Kratos live again. And that's very funny to use. That he can put off lives, but also put on lives again with his heart starter.
Don't try this at home, kids.
I mean, look at that.
Well, I absolutely love this part because I've never seen these walls being portrayed in any way, and it's the protective wall of Asgard, built by a giant and his horse. And it's also interesting because Loki has a big part in this story when they were building this wall. When Asgard is building, they need a protection wall, and one of the giants are suggesting he's the one who could build the wall to the gods, but he wants to marry Freya as payment. And the gods wants the wall, but Freya do not want to marry this guy. So Loki comes up with, well, let's make it a time limit. If he can do it on a winter, you will have Freya. And then they will know that it's not possible to make the wall just for a winter, so they will have a half wall and Freya can be back at home. But this man, Rimturs, this giant, has a horse. And the horse are very efficient in this way of working, so the wall is building up very fast. And they see he will manage to make the wall in the time he has. So therefore Loki needs to come up with a plan. So he turns himself to a beautiful horse.
As you do.
And he starts to be very attractive in horse way.
He seduces the stallion.
Yes. So the stallion will run away into the forest and leave the poor giant by himself. And the wall will not be ready in the winter time. Also, the guardian of the wall later. In the mythology, he's a very important figure in protecting Asgard and also the whole world in some kind. And we meet him for the first time in this clip too. And Heimdall are famous for many things, but also because his hearing and his sight.
Now, one detail that I find quite neat is the portrayal of Heimdall in a white tunic, because in the sources he's known as Heimdall and Kviti, or the White Ouse, the White God.
This way, Loki of the Jötnar.
Wait, is that Gjallarhorn? Are you Heimdall?
In my opinion, the Gjallarhorn needs a little work. There's plenty of amazing archaeological finds of horns. Either, as is shown in the game, it's a horn from some kind of animal. They have edges, which is trimmed in copper alloy, bronze, or tin, silver sometimes. But from Denmark, from the 5th century AD or so, you find the Gjallarhorn's horns, which were solid gold. Unfortunately, in the 19th century, they were stolen and melted down. But detailed drawings of the motifs on it were done by Danish archaeologists, fortunately, and they are quite spectacular. Heimdall's sword, it looks off. The proportions are way off. The handle, it's too long, and the pommel appears to be a little too small. The crossguard, however, is at least recognizably Viking Age. It could be what we call a Peterson type D. It's popular in Norway in the 9th century. I gotta give props for the scabbard, it looks pretty good. Inspired by illuminated manuscripts. Also, the quick detail of the scabbard shape. The thing at the end of the scabbard that we see looks very good, in fact.
Loki, you made it. I am so honored. I see you've met Heimdall.
We see Odin in this game, and he's depicted in a unusual way. Usually when we see him, he has got this long, flowing white hair.
Yeah.
In this game, he's bald.
But you can still recognize his Odin in some ways. For example, he has these ravens raven details all over his body or outfit.
One detail that I caught on Odin's model is that the eye patch arrangement has some extra straps.
Yeah.
And one of them has a disc. Looks like silver. It has the rune F on it. What does the F rune mean? What's the name of the F rune?
You can help me there.
You gotta do your homework, Jacob.
Yes.
No, it's fear. It's literally means cattle, but it means wealth or power almost. And it's interesting that it's wearing the symbol of wealth on its head, which sort of conveys the way that he values knowledge above all things. And we see this in Norse mythology as well. He's obsessed by knowledge, he's a knowledge seeker, he sacrifices, his eye to Mimir as well, but also he sacrifices himself to the tree.
The books. Good. Those are for him. I understand you're an avid reader. These are just a few things from my personal collection.
Thanks.
One detail I also liked is when Loki is invited into the lodge, he is giving a large pile of books. And books are perhaps a symbol of knowledge, but perhaps not associated with Vikings and the Scandinavians. If you will have written something down with runes or knowledge to teach during Viking Age, it would probably not be in this pile of books. Perhaps.
No, presumably you'd use bone, horn, or wood, stone. The scene would have been very funny if Odin had dumped a large pile of rune stones, or runic inscriptions or stone tablets in his embrace rather than the books.
Sif, you missed welcoming our new house guest. Say hello to Loki.
This is him? Here.
We also meet another god in Odin's lodge.
Sif, the wife of Thor. You can also see that she looks strong and perhaps has a strong personality, and I guess you need that if you're a wife to Thor as well.
As you can see, she's got enormous amounts of golden hair, and she's famed for her amazing locks in Norse mythology. she's also a little bit hostile to Loki.
Yes, and because Loki is a big part of why Sif has this golden hair. In the sagas or the mythology, Loki cuts Sif's hair, and
As a prank.
yes, as a prank, and then needs to get new hair to Sif, otherwise he will be killed by Thor. So he seeks someone who can make new hair for Sif and find it in the dwarves. So the dwarves makes the golden hair to Sif, and
Out of literal gold this time.
yes, and in the game you can see it's glimmering like gold. So perhaps this has happened before.
Whoa!
Loki, right? Gotta say, the irony of this isn't lost on me. This was his room, you know?
His?
My brother's.
Your brother?
Modi?
So in this game we get to see almost the full family of Thor. This is Þrúðr. She's not mentioned many times in the history, but you can still recognize her as well as the first things we were talking about. She's described as she's very strong.
Her name means
Yeah.
strength, literally.
She has the red hair of the family of Thor, and she has similar personality, I guess, as Thor, at least as we know Thor. So you can see she is in the family of Thor. In the sagas, she sometimes are mentioned as just a strong woman, but also that she is serving the Einherjar in Valhall.
In Norse drinking culture, the serving of the mead, which is a high status drink, is supposed to be done by the high status woman of the gathering or the party. So in a gathering like this, and we have Thor, you presumably have Thor's wife, Sif, and his daughter, Þrúðr, serving. This time she's trying to get Thor to, well, stop drinking and sober up.
Yes.
And of course, an attempt to get Thor to stop drinking ends, predictably in a bar fight. Fittingly enough, this is in Valhall, where the two main, pastimes are fighting and feasting. Combining the two seems like the natural thing to do, very on the brand.
Yeah.
Great soldiers, these Einherjar, but they tend to come out of Valhalla a little foggy.
The Einherjar, I think is mentioned in the first game as well, is the fallen warriors of Odin's army, if you say so. Human warriors that dies at the battlefield, and Odin picks them to be in his army to be ready for Ragnarok.
He doesn't pick them, the Valkyries do.
The Valkyries.
And they bring them to Valhall.
Yes. But this Einherjar in the game is these white pale people, and in this clip we will see Odin walks around and tells us that it's important for them to remember who they were in life. And he also mentions some names when he's talking to some of them, and these are also historical persons, or at least from the sagas.
Yeah.
Hrothgar from the Beowulf stories, for example, is named. And there's some other names that I can't remember now, but they're still from different sagas. So there are heroes in the sagas, and that's a fun detail of this scene. So we get to see Lyngbakr. He is a special creature. He's from the Icelandic sagas. I think it's from one of the sagas.
Örvar saga.
Exactly. He's just mentioned as one of two very important creatures of that saga. That he is a fish or turtle-like type of creature that also is an island and tries to lure people on top of him, and then he drowns them in the sea outside Greenland.
It might be based on, the impressions of these huge creatures living in the Greenland Sea or the Atlantic, looking like islands before suddenly disappearing underwater. We have to remember that the material that we have to reconstruct the Norse mythology is very limited. We only have access to a fragment of the stories and sagas which was told during the Viking Age and during the early Middle Ages.
Yes, and sea monsters like this are very common in all mythologies. So it could also be a mix of other mythologies, stories told by other cultures, and becomes a mix of all. So, but it's a cool monster.
I wouldn't say monster even, it's just a really big creature, at least in the game. It becomes quite emotional for the well, at least for Mimir, whose, what does he call it, youthful mistakes, had him trap it and give it as a gift to Odin. And this is very on the brand for the God of War sagas, which paints, the gods in the, well, worst possible light, I'd say.
Oh, I'm gonna miss you, little one.
And now about this beautiful ring, Draupnir. In some sources it is a ring, sometimes it is an arm ring, but mostly or more often you see it as a ring on your finger. And it's a mythical, and you can recognize all the myths about it mentioned in this story as well, that is becoming 8 more, something like that.
I think every night it's supposed to spawn 9 more rings, but of course the telling varies. The detail I like is that when Sindri is trying to give it away, he becomes very reluctant, which plays upon the supposed greed it entails, famed from, actually the source of the Horned Helmet myth, the Ringen des Nibelungen, the German opera from the late 19th century.
One thing that's also interesting about this story is that they are going underwater to get it, and it's also another story about another ring, but it's also a famous ring. So they combine the 2 stories of the mythology, the Draupnir story and the Andvari story, when Loki, again a part of that story, is getting the treasure of Andvari from Ran, a god from underwaters. And perhaps this mermaid-like figure is Ran.
Yeah,
and
that was my first impression, at least.
Yes, and they have an old take about it and mix these stories and make their own, that this is the same ring, both Andvari's treasure and Draupnir. And I like that combination of stories.
I have one complaint.
Yeah?
Just like the handle of Mjolnir, Draupnir is too short. This is a spear. It's probably out of frame, so we're going to drop it like this. But this is approximately 2.5 meters long, and this is the average height of a regular spear during the Viking Age. The design of the spearhead itself is quite okay, and he uses it, relatively realistically. Another complaint, I have lots of complaints, I'm sorry, is that he uses it two-handed a lot. And while we do see this depicted in some sources, the vast majority of times when we see a spear being used is used one-handed, but also in an overhanded fashion, like this.
Yeah.
And me, being, not as strong as Kratos, I'm easily able to handle the spear one-handed a lot longer.
But you are almost as tall as Kratos.
Isn't he like 7 feet?
I don't know.
Close enough.
I'm not finished with it yet.
Well, you always want to talk about the appearance of these people. I want to talk about the people underneath the clothes, if you say so.
Way to make me look shallow, Jacob.
Yes, yes. That's what I like to do. Angrboða is an interesting person or a creature or a giant or semi-giant in the mythology. She comes from the giants. She lives in the forests and she takes care of wolves as her children. And she also gets some children with Loki. So the thing we get to see this is perhaps when they get to know each other. Later on, they will have some beautiful children, like the Jörmungandr from
the Midgard serpent.
The Midgard serpent, the Fenris wolf, and also they have a daughter that is half rotten, Hel.
Hel.
Yes.
Half beautiful woman, half cold, rotten corpse. And then, of course, you meet is it the future mother-in-law? Grilla.
Yes, and she's not from the mythology. She's more like Icelandic folk sagas.
She is mentioned in Snorri's Edda, for instance, but she's way more famous from Icelandic folklore.
And this giant lady is also eating cats, right?
No, so she eats you if you've been bad. If you don't get any clothing or any socks, you get eaten by the cat.
Don't go to Iceland.
It's a terrible place. No! So, Jacob, thoughts so far?
It's a very interesting take of Loki, and I like the fact that they are combining all, or at least many stories where Loki is a key figure in the sagas or mythology, and they have it briefly spoken of, and the characters are appearing in the game, but they have always their own take of it. Almost like someone telling the story, as in Viking Age, you tell the story, you will not write it down in one of Odin's books in the game. You will probably tell the sagas and then you have your own take of it. So I see this game a little bit like a skald telling the story of Loki in his own way.
Yeah, but I like that take,
Yeah?
actually. And after we did the first video, I played through the first game. It was really good. And I'm really looking forward to play this one as well. If anyone out there has a PS5, please send it to me.
Or to me.
Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like the video if you enjoyed and leave a comment for whatever game, universe or franchise you want to see our experts break down next. And we'll see you in the next one.